And that's what unions do. They make sure these atrocities are taken care of. You can't make that person work slave labor at 280% just because it saves you money. You have to. None of that's on the market. You understand what they're saying? None of it's on the market. You're going to do enough work to be just like everybody else. You'll do the same amount of work everybody does. You're going to get paid the same amount everybody does. You're going to get up in the morning like everybody does. You're going to go whenever it's done like everybody does. You're going to get more if you work the non-standard hours. You're going to get a lot more if you have to work overtime, and that better come to an end. And those things are off the market. You don't get a choice. The government's going to watch you, and you can't do anything but that, and unions are going to watch you, and that's it. But the unions cannot go in and negotiate wages. And why are they saying that? Because number one, the wages are negotiated by unions and people for everybody that's at the minimum level, and anybody that wants to get above the minimum level has to educate themselves or be worth it. They don't need a union. So those are the things that have changed. If you're in government, if you're doing government work, the same thing holds true. You get paid a level equivalent to the going wage for similar work in the area where you are by a private employer, and there's no job protection other than that. There's no job protection in the government or anywhere for those people that are not employable, or just choose not to be employable. In other words, you will do a certain amount of work, and you will get up at a certain time, and you'll go to work, and you'll quit, and just like everybody else. And as long as you're not any different than anybody else, they can't touch you, even if they don't like you. I mean, now you understand that there are exceptions to this, and one of them is in a business where you're dealing with the public. You can't have a real jerk person dealing with people, because why? Because that gives a bad name to the company, number one, and number two, you don't like it. You don't have to put up with some jerk being hired by a company to jerk you around. You don't have to put up with that. That's out. And so they don't have to keep you hired if you're going to be that jerk. And when you get involved in the point where you're going to fire the person, you just say, we got 10 people that'll tell you that this guy's a jerk in public, and in public is where he was hired. That's what he's supposed to do, and he can't do it, so he's not willing to do what has to be done. So are there exceptions? Sure. That's one of them, and there'll be a lot more of them probably, but otherwise you have to become worth more if you want to make more money. And they'll have a legally prescribed manner for firing an employee, and those steps that they have will have to be followed to the letter if the employee is fired, and we'll be watching you to make sure that you do it that way, and then obviously the person who is going to be watched that's working, because he has to fulfill his part too. Okay, so they say, okay, we've taken care of the people who work in the private sector, and we have minimum level of employment, and then we have people that can go on above that, and we're all for that. Then they come to the people who choose to be on government assistance, and they say right away, we're not talking about those who can't find a job because they cannot or cannot be hired because of physical problems, or the only people that we're talking about are the people who choose to not get up on time, choose not to dress appropriately, choose to not do the amount of work that everybody else is doing, chooses to be obnoxious, chooses. Those people will be removed from the private sector because nobody's going to hire them, but they got to eat, so the government now has to support them. Well, the government gives them a job, and that's going to be kind of tricky. But anyway, they give them a job, and they have to struggle with the fact that they got to work or they won't eat. And they have this job, and it isn't the same as a public sector type job, but they'll still have to do things, and it might become more militarily demanding. I don't know. Our government can decide that, but they will do things that are needed. If it's only you will get up and sweep the street in front of your house and sidewalk for 5 hours a day or whatever. You understand what we're saying? You're going to get up and work. You're going to do something if you can, or you're not going to get any money. And those people that are not getting any money, they're going to be watched, because there's going to be, what will be the next thing? Drug sales, or things that are illegal, or living with a person that is getting money, which they say you can't do anymore. So you got people that choose to not be in the productive part of our society. They choose to have less food, cheaper clothes, poor housing, and a used car, and by their very action they have chosen a lesser lifestyle, and if they're not careful, they'll choose not to have children. And they say, understand these goals, these are the goals, and only for those who choose to be on assistance. We're not talking about the young, we're not talking about the ill, we're not talking about the injured, or those people that are retired, or anybody else that somehow doesn't have a choice. They say, we know that there's a need for experience, and there's a thing called accidents or bad luck that give us that experience. That's viewed as punishment enough. What we're talking about are those people who choose not to try to become employed in the private sector. We're talking about those who choose not to wake up on time, not to get to work on time, that choose not to give a minimum level of production, or choose to make themselves non-hireable in some manner for whatever reason. We're talking about those who think they have a right to be supported just because they are alive and live in this country. Now, do you know people like that? You bet. Well, that's the people that they're talking about, and they say, no, that is not going to fly anymore. You're going to get out, and you're going to work, and you're going to have less than the other people. And you should. And not have children, by the way. And they say, we now, with those things taken care of, we take that money that we have saved and put it in other areas. One of them is going to be social health, preventive help. And what they always say is, we're going to reward those who do what we're trying to get done, and we're going to punish those that aren't doing what we want to get done, but we won't punish them too hard. But we'll punish them. The used car, when everybody else got a new car, might be punishment. Reward all those who be productive, because that's economically wise. Reward all those that raise healthy children in each of the three categories, because that's both economically wise and needed to accomplish the goal back to Father. Punish those who choose to block these goals, or at least give them no reward. Stop those that would add misery to this earth by adding more unwanted people. And so ends the discussion that we're dealing with when we're dealing with children. Go on to other parts of the economy, but they were really wanted. If the child is 10 times more valuable, any given child is, if that child has a shot at reaching his full potential or her full potential, if that child has that shot, then we don't know. We don't know if that happens to be the child that's going to give us free energy. You just don't know. And so, economically speaking, you can't afford not to do things the way they're saying they need to be done. We need to raise our children properly. And we don't need to have two people working out there and somebody taking care of the child and not raising the child. So I spent a lot of time here in this, and this is the place, the emphasis on economy. And one of the things that you begin to understand is that they spent so much time with this because the child is 10 times more important in our economy. than anything else. See, they put their time where the value is. They put their time where the value is. So they're trying to ask you to do the same thing. Going on with the review, things have changed greatly in our new system, economically speaking. We have shown you who creates wealth and who supports or helps those who create wealth. We have shown you who the burden class is and how to cut that group to a minimum, but keep the ones that should be there, We have shown you who the burden class is and how to cut that group to the minimum, but we want to make sure that you understand, do it properly. As we continue to force people to prove that they can actually do the work that they were hired for, the game players are found out, and the triple class burden. You remember triple burden class? People that are stopping the production and being paid a tremendous amount of money to do that, most of them government workers. They begin to disappear, and by the way, they begin to appear out there in productive jobs, and we're starting to make some real progress in that area because those people are smart. Oh man, do we need those people out there? We need them out there. We need to get them out of the burden class. Get them out there working on things that, like free energy and things like that. As we begin to understand economics, as it truly is, the direction of our country should be moving. The direction our country should be moving also becomes clear. The social prestige might someday be given to the person who creates wealth, not, as now, those in the triple burden class. What did they say? They said, in the triple burden class, there are these very intelligent people who are doing absolutely nothing and even making us poorer considerably. And we're paying them a tremendous amount of money. Way more than we pay a farmer. We might someday reward financially those who increase our wealth, not to those who manipulate it and us. Things will change as the game players have proven their claims, and we'll begin to truly see who is doing what. Things will change as the game players have to prove their claims. Game players get rid of their pieces of paper that say, I am a doctor, a lawyer, and then have to prove that they can do what it is that they say they can do. Whoa. And then we truly begin to see who is doing what. And that's kind of the new system. So they say, so going on, we'll now examine how these changes will affect the various segments of our economy. Let's look at business and see where the changes are found there. Rather than having to do the government's work for them, businesses will go back to the task of being a business. What did they say? They don't collect taxes. They don't collect unemployment tax. They don't collect medical or have medical. They're not involved in taxes. They're involved in doing their work. No workman's compensation, no Social Security tax. On and on it goes. No unemployment insurance to deal with. There'll be no health insurance, obviously, because health is free. There'll be no tax on the business, no tax on the business's inventory, no tax on the profit of the business, no tax on anything. The only taxes that we'll have are those that we explained earlier. The tax burden placed on the business has caused many good businesses to fail. Why? The only reason for all that red tape and burden is so the government can hide the amount of tax they are collecting from you. That's underlined in red lettered. The only reason for all this stuff that the businesses have to do is so that the government can hide the amount of tax they are collecting from you. The removal of almost all tax consideration from business should free them to get back to what they do best, which is business. Employers will still have to collect the income tax from employees that make over $400,000 a year, and you know that that's almost nobody. And those who have special charges because the support thing is on a Social Security number, and those support people are anti-abortionists that are taking care of the children. But that's it. All of the federal programs pushed on businesses will be replaced by programs more efficient and less costly, administered by someone other than business. All this will help business in this example country to become more efficient and less costly. What does that mean? That means either they're going to make more profit or they're going to charge less. The same thing happens when you get over $400,000 a year. You're just not going to charge more because it isn't worth it. Okay, I'm going to charge more until I make $1 million. Okay, go ahead. You're paying tremendous amount of taxes, and at $1 million, you're paying 100%. So what does that mean? It means you can't overcharge anymore. That's what it means. Well, I'll give it to my wife, okay, and then I'll give it to my foreman, okay. I'll give it to my. Why are they saying okay? Because they're going to spend it. And one of the things you can be sure of is these people that are making that absolutely insane income don't spend it. Don't spend it on things that, the routine things. I mean, do they have their own jet? Sure. What does that do for you? Zip. Well, can you ever see the picture of these guys that have these dominoes in the living room and they push one down and these tremendous cascade of dominoes falling over all over the living room? You can't conceive of what's going to happen when you just do that one little thing. They said that's going to be the second most important thing in this whole of Book 4, to eliminate those people that are insanely desired of collecting the money. What happens? All of a sudden you have more money. All of a sudden the money is being spent. What a change. They can't hide so many things. You can't get your money out of the country because it has to go through the federal government. You can't carry it out. You can't, bank it out. You can't get it out of the country. So without paying the taxes, they're watching the money that comes into the country and going back out, because there are people that are importing, like exporting from their country to our country. And they're taking care of the fact that the taxes are being paid by the federal government. So, all of a sudden, all of these ridiculous taxes and fees and licenses are no cost. You might license a business, but no cost. So you have bookkeepers, no bookkeepers. So you have tax consultants, no tax consultants. You don't have the problem. You don't need all this make work for businesses. All of a sudden they're not doing all that stuff. So they end up to become, the stuff that they make costs less. So they say, with that in mind, we might as well add the rest of the changes needed to get this example country up and running as it relates to business. In the changes seen above, business gets a break. It needs to go back to the business of creating wealth and the things we need to better our lives. The government must stop all the intelligence gains and get to the work of serving our needs. We can now determine what it is that we want and get rid of those of the make-work programs that rob us of our time and money. Make-work. Those make-work programs. Boy, that'd be different right there. I kind of think that at least a quarter of everything that you pay out of your pocket every month goes to make-work programs that do absolutely nothing for you. They just make somebody else money. And I'm pretty sure that I'm off considerably as I think about how these things affect your life. But, basically, the dominoes in the living room, you just can't see them all until they start to fall, and you probably wouldn't see that until it started affecting your pocketbook. So they say there will be jobs lost and jobs created as the changes take form. We may get down to a 30 or even 20-hour work week. Most of the changes economically will come from the change in our attitude toward who makes us wealthy and who uses our wealth. The farmer may get his or her due yet. The manufacturer, who now gives you true gain in production with little or no pollution, will be honored. The government employee who interferes with the operation will be removed. The day of high-paid intelligence game players will come to an end. All this will come about as you ask again and again, does this truly need to be done? What is the end result if it is done? What is the end result if it is not done? How does the end result relate to the cost of doing things? Could we have gotten the same thing done, or at least an acceptable result in another manner for much less cost? It will come about as you begin to see who creates the wealth. It will come about as government is shown its job and it begins to do it. Now there you are, laid right out for you. And as we say again and again and again, you just can't conceive of how much less this is going to cost you. You almost have to do it. I'd love to see it done in one state, and all of a sudden the people in that state are doing considerably a lot better, and the rest of the states are saying, wait a minute, hey, we want that too. Just a thought. To go on then with even more changes, we'll move to the stock market. Here is probably the number one game place. And rather than spend your valuable time here in an effort to expose all the games, we will rather set down the new rules. So what did they say? They said there are way too many games. It's just insane, and it's a gambling system that the overchargers have put into place to get your money. And did they? Yeah, recently they did. We're in 2014 recording this, and we've already had a tremendous stock market drop, and people lost a third or better of their stock things, and it was all a game. It wasn't real. None of it was real. It was just stealing money. So they said, rather than get in there and show you what's going on and try to manipulate the rules, they said, oh, forget all that. Let's make new rules, and let's make them simple, like, when they were talking about the laws. The game players are just so good at twisting everything around and making the laws to the point where nobody can understand them. And then they get you. You have to pay for lawyers to explain to you a law. You remember the game. So here we are in the same place. We have the stock market. People who have made money want to put it in an investment so they can retire with more than what the government gives them, which is perfectly okay. And to do that, they have to have a place to do it, and it's been the stock market. What was the banks, and of course they went to, if you get 0.5% on your savings now, you're just overjoyed. So that's the whole system of managing your savings is insane. So let's stop it all and turn around and make new rules and get rid of the game players, and understand that the game players can now go to the semi-private gambling places, and if they qualify, they can go play there. We just moved them away from the common person and into the people that can afford to lose their money. So the changes in the rules, the first rule comes from the understanding that stocks are designed to allow anyone who wants to gamble on a business, any kind of a business, the vehicle to make that investment with some safeguards. You have to understand that it's gambling, because if the business goes out of business, you lose your money, and that can't be denied. But there's two things that are focused on here. The first one is there are businesses out there that need financing, and they can't get it from a bank because they don't meet the bank's requirements. So they say, look, look at me, look at my business. I need financing. Is there anybody out there that recognizes the quality of this business and will finance besides the bank that won't? And an investor will say, oh, hey, I'll take a gamble on your company, but you understand that I want more than oh, by the way, we're going to get to it down the road here, but anyway, we've got to say it now. Banks are locked at 6%. They cannot give any more than 6%. They can give less than 6% depending on the economy. But the money that's put into a bank and then loaned out, and then it's loaned out, and that's the way the banks are, and there are changes in the banks. But But basically, they'll give you up to 6% on the money that you put in the bank. They can't give you more. They can give you less, and the money is the original investment, or the money you've got in your account is guaranteed by the federal government this time, and it's real. So now you turn around and look at the stock. Now that's 6% maximum. That's all you can get. So you turn around and look at the person that's got a business that you check the business out and say, wow, looks good to me, I'll invest in that. The most you can get is 12%, and you could lose it all. But you understand that we're in the new system, and the government and the People's Trust News is watching businesses, and the businesses are licensed. They don't charge for the license, but they're licensed. In other words, the government says, what are you doing? I'm making a whatchamajig, and the whatchamajig is better than the other whatchamajigs out there. And so I want to get going, and you look at the company and say, well, it's viable, and it's a pretty neat whatchamajig, so I want to invest in it. And the government says, okay, it would appear that you are able to make that whatchamajig, and you look like you're a standard company, so we'll give you a license to make that whatchamajig. So now they've got a license, and their stock comes up for sale, and the people that want to invest their money and make more than 6%, or they're right there loaning the company money. Company makes a whatchamajig, and everybody's happy. Like I said before, there's a chance that the company will go out of business, but you're watching them, or you're somebody. It's just like stock market now, only it's more regulated by the federal government so that they don't cheat you. That doesn't even exist now. So they say that you can now buy the stock from the company, but there's something a little different. All the stock will be non-voting stock. What does that mean? It means that the people that buy the stock have no control of any kind over what the company does. They're not on the board of directors. They're not allowed. They have nothing. They are investing money. They have nothing to do with the business. Why do they recommend that? The owners and the owners that owning the company, control the company, will remain the same after the sale as it was before. Why do they do that? They say, well, there are a lot of reasons, but let me give just a couple. First, the people who buy stock aren't necessarily good business people. And they say we would have the best business people running a business. Second, we would eliminate the buyout of a business, and then they're buying the business by these stock purchases, and then having the business be sold because the assets are worth more than the cost of the stock. And they say if it's a viable company, we want it to remain in business, not ripped apart for someone's profit. In both of these reasons, in both of the reasons that we got there, the temptation would be to take short-term profit, and the business is long-term. Those who run a business want long-term. The people who are employed in a business want long-term. Short-term equals atrocities in a business. There will be job losses if the assets are sold, and it's not just that business. So now what they said is, you got a good business, it's running great, somebody buys the stock, they have controlling interests, and they sell the company out for the assets, because the assets are worth way more than they paid for the stock. Now that everybody's out of business, and it's even worse. The job loss because the assets are sold, the business can't do business anymore, and so the business is no longer functioning. But the people that are supplying the business are also out of a job. We're talking about people that are, given the widget screws and the widget this is and the widget that is, and those people are now, they don't have anybody that they can make their stuff for, so now they're out of job. So we're talking about a few people, these investors, taking a tremendous profit, and then we have a disaster for all these other people. It's like, wow, what a rotten thing to do.